Right, everyone. William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1915 Diary Series. We've got a special one today because we've got other members of the imperial family, so those are always interesting to see how they interact with each other. And we've also got an excerpt from Nicholas II's diary to confirm what Dmitri has to say in his diary entry for that day. That is courtesy of Alexandra and Natasha, because I don't usually, I'm not well organized enough, let's put it that way, to usually coordinate these things. Anyway, here we go with our recap. Well, Dmitri had not a great time at his father's the day before for dinner. He doesn't say why he had a bad time, just that it was boring, his usual word, but also that it was pointless. So I don't know if he'd gone there in the hope of accomplishing something, but if so, it didn't work out. And then, but he made up for it by going back into town and having a nice night at the Astoria with two lady friends and one male friend who sang for them. Our cast today is multiple. We have two cabinet ministers in addition to Shagubatov, although his appearance is brief, and we have another Flügel adjutant who happens to be a person that I have a connection to historically, not personally or in a family sense, and Grand Duke Paul. And then we have Nicholas, Alexandra, and three of their children. Maria and Anastasia are not mentioned, but I'm sure they were around. All right, so we are on the 19th of February / the 4th of March, 1915, in Tsarskoye Selo, although Dmitri begins the day in Petrograd. But what he puts in for the diary entry is Tsarskoye Selo, adjutant's room. It's really cold today. It's minus 14. Clear but windy. Okay, here we go. I got up in Petrograd around 9 o'clock. I slept well, but my nose is still painful. Shagubatov came by for me in the morning and we went to Tsarskoye. I am on duty as a Flügel adjutant. Tunic, decorations, leather ammunition belt without a revolver, hat, and blank. I replaced Fabritsky. The Emperor received Sazonov and the Naval Minister Grigorovich in the morning. I lunched with their majesties at 1 o'clock, then had a personal conversation with Nicky. He was terribly kind and warm. Around 4 o'clock, I went to the hospital with Nicky and Alex, the one in the artillery school. Nicky gave out medals. Alex, Olga, and Tatiana were dressed as nurses. Tea was at 5 o'clock. Papa came. Then I dropped in to see Aleksei. He shocked me with his sweet behavior. We dined at 8 o'clock, after which I played billiards with Nicky. Of 5 games, I won 3. Evening tea, and then around 12:30 we parted. Okay, Dmitri is really quite laconic in these diary entries. I always wish so much that he had already adopted his habit of writing long, very resonant, emotional diary entries once every 10 days, but not yet. That will start in 1917. Okay, so here we go. You will notice at the outset, I always like to look at the forms of the names that he's using. So he starts out referring to their majesties, but he is not as formal as he sometimes is. He's not saying Gasudar or Imperatrica. He is saying Nicky and Alex, and of course calling the children by their name. And with the ministers, Sazonov and Grigorovich, So not particularly respectful, but then again, he would not have addressed them that way. This is just in his diaries. Kind of funny to think of an adjutant having an adjutant in this instance. So Shagubatov came by for me in the morning, is what he says. You know, he hasn't talked at all about this new Renault that he got. You know, and he's only mentioned once actually being in it. So I don't know. Maybe he's just already lost interest in talking about it in his diaries. But, you know, it doesn't seem like Shagubatov is joining him at the Alexander Palace in Tsarskoye Selo, but he does accompany him that morning, either just to the train station or, no, Dmitri says we went to Tsarskoye. Okay. He was on duty there as Flügel Adjutant Dmitri. It's a German word, Flügel Adjutant, I think. It's, you know, the Russian military was full of, well, the Russian land forces. The language used was full of German terms. At court you had French but primarily German words that were used. In the Navy, it was Dutch primarily. You know, Peter the Great had actually gone to the Netherlands and studied shipbuilding, and they were the great one of the great seafaring powers at that time, and the Germans were not. Okay, so if you recall, I think it was the previous week, Nicholas had specifically asked Dmitri to put himself on the roster as a Flügel Adjutant, and in Russian, it's spelled with an E, a Flügel Adjutant, but of course the German that it comes from is Flugelu umlaut, so hard to pronounce, at least for me. Yeah, you know, what did it mean to be a Flügel Adjutant? Well, they would do a 24-hour shift at a time, and the excellent, certainly the best out there, and a really excellent account of what a Flügel Adjutant did is provided by Fabritsky, who Dmitri was replacing this morning. Fabritsky was on duty, and then Dmitri came and relieved him. So Fabritsky was an admiral. He had started out his career as just a sort of everyman, going to the Naval Academy, and because he came from a family in Odessa, a Russian family in Odessa, and they were jurists and lawyers, but he had a passion for the sea, and so he was a little old when he was finally talked his parents into letting him apply for the Naval Academy. And because he was you know, a year or two older than the other boys who were entering the freshman year, he had to get an exemption, and so his father applied to Grand Duke Aleksei Alexandrovich, who was the head of the Russian Navy, and they got the exception. But he was really just a kind of everyman. He wasn't, you know, he didn't have strong connections, but he ended up getting his connections from serving on the Polar Star, the Dowager Empress's yacht, and then later on the Standard, Nicholas and Alexandra's yacht, and he and Nicholas just really kind of hit it off. And so then he was able to rise fairly rapidly, which definitely ruffled quite a few feathers. And Nicholas liked having Fabritsky around. Fabritsky would be an important figure in the First World War because he would be tasked with starting Russia's very first Marine division, taking sailors and soldiers and training them and forming them into Marines to guard the coast. All right. Anyway, he wrote this absolutely brilliant account of what a Flegel adjutant did. So they had these 24-hour duty terms of duty, and one of the main things they did, which I find fascinating, is that every Russian technically had a right to come and petition the Tsar directly. Not directly in the sense of seeing him, but directly in the sense of going to the palace and being received and making their petition and having the petition taken and summarized then for the emperor, and then certain ones flagged as being more important. And then, every day they would be put together and put on the emperor's desk, and he could decide what he wanted to do with them. And one of the more fascinating things I did as an undergraduate at the University of London was to go through some of these that had been saved from the the emperor's chancelleries prior to Nicholas II, that peasants would sometimes come in groups. A given village might send delegates, and they would come in groups, and they would petition the Tsar. And I read a lot of those petitions as they were written down for the emperor, any given emperor, by the Flegel adjutants, and they were just really fascinating. A little bit repetitive, but really fascinating. And then there would be notes also on, whether the Tsar had acted on any of these petitions. So that's what Dmitri would be doing. He refers to the adjutant's room, so there would be a bunk in there where he would spend the night. And he would be seeing. He mentions these two cabinet ministers. So we have Sergei Dmitrievich Sazonov, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We have Konstantin Grigorovich, Ivan Konstantinovich Grigorovich, who was the naval minister and an admiral. And so Dmitri would have seen them prior to them being let in to see Nicholas II. Of course, they weren't just there randomly. One assumes that they were there to report on a regular basis to the emperor. And then, most of the time, according to Fabritsky, most of the time the duty adjutant, and also in Dmitri's earlier diaries, from when he was an adolescent, most of the time the Flegel adjutant was asked to join the family for the big meals, for lunch and for dinner. Breakfast and tea were more intimate. It seems like Dmitri wasn't asked to tea on this particular day. But anyway, does he mention it? No, he was asked to tea. What am I thinking? Not only was he asked to tea, but Paul was asked to tea. So it really was a family event. And if you want to read, so my connection with Fabritsky is that I did the first, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe to date the only English translation of his memoirs, which I entitled Of Bygone Days. It's out of print at the moment, but you might still be able to find a copy at Amazon or somewhere else. And really, really fascinating. Lots of insights into the inner circle of the family and the servitors around Nicholas. And where are we now? So he says that after these meetings with the cabinet ministers, the Tsar made a little time for him. They had he said, I had a personal conversation with Nikki. I don't think he means personal in the sense of Dmitri saying, oh, give me some advice on women, or here's what's going on in my life right now. I think just one-on-one would probably be the better way of putting it. They had a nice talk with each other. You notice now that there's no uncle anymore. It's just Nikki. So certainly Dmitri was using the word uncle as in his adolescent diaries, but now it's just Nikki and Alex instead of uncle and aunt. He doesn't comment on the hospital visit. We know from previous diary entries going all the way back to 1906 that he felt awkward on these visits. He didn't really know what to say, and but at least he wasn't in the forefront this time. He was just there as an adjutant to the emperor. The oldest two girls had by this time become trained nurses. I think Olga would turn 20 that year, and Tatiana would turn 18, and they and Alex went to this hospital in the artillery school. And then, Papa comes to tea when they get back to the Alexander Palace, but he does not bring Mamachka. He does not bring his wife, who probably was not invited. I don't think she was ever received, even though she was allowed to come back to Russia. Okay, this makes me laugh, because Dmitri has always been so disgusted by the behavior of Nicholas and Alexander's children. When the girls were little, he just thought they were the absolute worst behaved children in the world. And now, apparently, and also, he had some issues with Aleksei that he wrote about in his letters to his sister around 1908, 1909. Not that he disliked him, but that Aleksei was kind of a pest. When Dmitri came to the Alexander Palace and wanted to spend time with Nicholas, Aleksei would insist on Dmitri coming to the nursery and then keeping him there, and would just, burst into tears when Dmitri went to leave. So I think Dmitri found that a little tiresome, but I don't think he disliked Aleksei at all. But anyway, clearly he groups him along with his sisters as being, not well-behaved children. So it's funny here that he actually uses this word. He shocked me with his sweet behavior. And I heard somewhere, I can't remember where, that Aleksei actually at some point came to kind of hero worship Dmitri, maybe after Dmitri's combat experience. But this really made me laugh. Okay, and then we end the day with billiards with Nicky. Both he and Dmitri really seem to have liked this game. As you know, Dmitri was playing it pretty much every day. He would go to the yacht club. And so, now here's what Nicholas said on that, in his diary entry for that day, even more laconic than Dmitri. Dmitri was on duty and had lunch and dinner with us. After some brief work at the tower, we all went to the artillery academy, where we visited the wounded in another section of the hospital than the one we had visited on 11th February. And that's all he says about that. And then at the end, he writes, I spent all evening playing billiards with Dmitri. So, he doesn't say anything about this conversation that Dmitri mentions or anything like that. That's fine. Next time we have another really interesting diary entry. I mean, things had starting to get a bit sort of same old, which what he was doing in Petrograd. But we have a good one. We have the first of several appearances in Petrograd of Brasova, whom Dmitri seems to have been kind of pursuing when he was in Moscow. And then we have, a night out at Medved, at the Bear nightclub, with some women whom he unkindly describes as ugly. And he seems to have been a little bit in a bit of a bad mood that day, but you can judge for yourself. Sorry I went so long today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.